Hi guys, what's up? I have literally no shoes on and I am just like, it's that kind of day. I'm gonna try to be conscious of the mic because I feel like in the past couple of videos, my mic has just been like too loud. And for that reason, sorry, I thought of another place I could put my phone because I'm trying to like experiment with different places. Welcome. Welcome to my world. My name is Lana Jade and I'm happy you're here. Today I'm going to talk about what is probably on a lot of people's minds, which would be the election. It is Tuesday, November 5th, if you are watching this in the future. It's around 3 p.m. 3 p.m., 2 p.m., 2 p.m. So there's no like result or anything yet, but um, it's not that I really want to make predictions. I think the biggest thing is that this is a coin toss, right? It's a coin toss. And we're all kind of, and I can't speak for you. I personally don't feel served by the two-party system. However, like I don't really feel like there's a strong alternative. Not my shirt being on backwards. That's so funny. I put it on so quick. I put on my shirt backwards. I was like, why does it feel like the neck's so high up? Okay, this is how Jesus wanted it. It's so funny because I just said to myself too, I was like, oh, I just wore this shirt in another video the other day. And I guess now it looks like a different shirt. And now we get to see it. It says 3 days of peace and music. I wish that's what the next 3 days would hold. It's from Woodstock, I think, but it's about peace, and that's why I wore it, because it's not like I'm a loving hippie pacifist, like I am in a way, but I don't identify as that. I have many names. So I was talking to my lovely girlfriend yesterday about the election, and I wrote about it and I channeled about it. And of course, I will be doing my civic duty and voting. I'm actually voting today. I didn't vote early, and it's kind of funny. Everybody, I feel like everybody voted early, which I guess is good. Like, great, I'm glad, but like, also, I felt like I was late to the party. I was like, damn, isn't election day on Tuesday? So I'll be voting after work today, and I vote in accordance with my values and my belief systems. Um, it's not about the candidate, and some people will say it is. And at the end of the day, you know, okay, let's think of it like this. Mushrooms, mycelium, right? They have an interconnected network underground, and then only one mushroom kind of peeks its head up, but it's connected to like billions and billions of other things underground. So that's kind of how I feel about it. It's like, yes, the president is like the mushroom, it's like the head of the mushroom, but it's connected to this very complex infinite network of mycelium underground. So while, yes, the two candidates are the face of decision making, they aren't actually, in most cases, the sole proprietor of the decision. Now, like I said, of course, there is a scenario in which this human being becomes the final decision maker and like a tiebreaker of sorts. But actually, I'm pretty sure that's like the Speaker of the House or the Vice President more so than anything else because they're more connected, I feel like, with Congress. I don't know. So I don't really put too much weight on a candidate, but instead what the candidate represents for us, right? What does the candidate represent? And right now, there are two candidates that represent probably like 50-50. And I feel like there's a good chunk of people in the middle there that aren't accounted for. But right now, this election, like I said, is a coin toss. It's a literal coin toss. Who's going to win, right? I have my hunches. I have my hunches in terms of like who's going to show up, who's going to vote for who. I have my intuition. Um, I do believe here's a scenario in which I believe is likely. I believe it's going to take a few days to get the official results, depending on those swing states, depending on how clear those are. the official results will roll in the next day or so. I remember in 2020, it was like a week-long process because of all the COVID restrictions and la 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 la. So I anticipate there being a lot of chatter, a lot of chaos, a lot of chatter and a lot of chaos about the voting mechanisms. I see this as a good thing because the chaos can only bring about change. And say in 2020, there was a lot of voter registration and mail-in ballot chaos, a lot of conversation about that. And it led to different protocols being put in place for this time around to ensure democracy or what have you. What have you, just that big thing, democracy. So we have this experience where people cast their votes. Now, some people might be firm believers that their vote is going to be counted and everything's going to be great. And then there are going to be people who do not believe that their vote is going to count and maybe they won't vote at all. And then there's going to be people who do not believe the results in the election. And then there's going to be people who do believe in the results of the election. And that is totally foreshadowed by the last election. I don't know why people would think that would change, just because we have what appears to be more stable ground. Okay. So they declare a winner of the election. And at the end of the day, this whole experience kind of reminds me of the moon landing. You know, it's like, we know they went there. There's some documentation, but the only people who really know are the people who were there, right? The people who were directly involved. I'm not directly involved in the election. Even poll workers, right? Like, yeah, you're directly involved in the election, but you could be a part of an illusion. So, like, there will be an explanation for everything from every perspective. It's a very diverse perspective. Some could call it a divided perspective. But I know that everything is being done and safeguards are being put in place. So that way we have a fair, locked in election. But what this is showing us, I think, is the flaws in the system. So it's kind of like a critical point or a tipping point, or I don't know what other point we could describe, where a population gets to a specific level and a transition state happens and then something new is created. I believe that we're at that transition point. The old structures and the old ways of doing things are no longer sustaining life in the way that we want to sustain life. Something to think about or consider. So I will be going in, I will be casting my ballot. I have no idea what happens after that. I trust. I just trust. I say, I trust. I trust that the powers that be will do what is necessary, what is right with my ballot. It will get to the necessary next step. It will be ideally counted, and everybody will enjoy the freedom of democracy. That's what I believe I'm doing, right? I believe that I'm going into the polls, I'm casting my ballot, it is going to count towards something, and that something will be a catalyst for whatever comes next. That's what people believe. And then there's a group of people who do not believe that. They believe that they are going to go into the polls, they are going to cast their ballot, and that it is going to be burned, or it is going to be changed, or it is going to be skewed, right? So I want everybody to understand that these beliefs exist and we cannot just sweep them under the rug. When 50% of people believe certain things, it isn't a problem of a candidate, it isn't a problem of an individual. It's a symptom of the structures not serving us. People are angry. People are very angry because they are unhappy. People are angry because they're unhappy. People are angry because the things that were told that were going to serve them are no longer serving them, myself included. I am in a place where I'm excited for change, right? I'm excited for change, whatever that looks like. At this point, my standards are so low because I'm just like, I just want it to change. I want the system to change. And it can be overwhelming. Definitely can be overwhelming because it's like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to change everything? Am I responsible to change everything? No. But I'm going to encourage you and welcome you into a perspective that I have that has absolutely changed my perception and experience of this election cycle. And it is not just not caring, right? That is different than what I'm about to describe. So, this is my third presidential election that I have been participating in actively by voting. In 2016, I voted. In 2020, I voted. And now we're in 2024. So, that's a pretty long span of time. And in 2016, I was in college. I was a freshman in college, or yeah, freshman in college, sophomore college. So I was very like, I wasn't as invested as I was in 2020, but I was aware of what was going on. And I recognized that people were hungry for a change. It'd kind of been like business as usual for 8 years at that point. People were ready like to disrupt the system. And that's what happened. There was a disruption in the system in 2016, which makes sense energetically with everything else going on the planet. So 2016, there's a disruption, a change, a new administration, but it's a new administration abiding by the same structures, right? And I personally was not really benefited by anything that happened from 2016 to 2020. And by 2020, seeing the way crisis was handled, I was motivated to become more engaged. And I became extremely engaged in politics in 2020 and 2021. 2020, I started a podcast with my friend, and the focus of the podcast was having conversations with people with differing perspectives, because that's always been a goal of mine, is to not even necessarily to unite, but to perceive one another as authentic beings, right? So you have a supporter of one party and an opposing person over here. These two people are both human beings and they're both living right now. So how did we get here, right? That's really the question I asked, like, how do we get here? And ultimately, I was very passionate. I was very involved, and it took a lot of my energy. It took a lot of my energy. A lot of it. I felt personally affected by the results. I was so invested in the 2020 election that like I was ill waiting for the results. I was like, and it took a while. Like I said, it took like a week, right, to like get the official results, like days. And I remember just rotting in my living room with my roommate and best friend, Kat. Hi, Kat. I love you. I also love you too, Ronak. I think you're amazing. I just didn't say my friend Ronak because I didn't want to make it a personal thing, but I just made it personal. So I want to make sure I acknowledge everybody. So I'm sitting with Kat, and we're just hanging out, and we were like ill. Like, we believed that this election result was going to greatly affect our lives. And so we were heavily invested. A lot of our energy went towards this. I remember I neglected all my schoolwork. I was like, you expect us to have meetings right now? This is the crisis, right? Over the last 4 years, I've had a radical shift in my life, in my energy, in my experiences, and I am in a new place consciously. And it's interesting. And of course, it's fundamentally different. There are different candidates. There is a different time. Like, there's a lot of different things going on, right? It's not exactly the same. But I recognize it's a 4-year cycle, and I'm taking stock of how I felt over the past 4-year cycles. And it feels really good. Like, I feel really good about this election, and I'll tell you why. Because people will probably be like, how do you feel good? How do I feel grounded in my goodness? Well, similar to how I felt, I think, in 2016, where I was like, I remember writing in my journal, like, if this person becomes president, then I'm not going to be able to get married because I'm gay. And maybe this candidate will get their hands on the nukes and we'll start World War III. All these very fear-mongering ideas. And that's in the consciousness of the collective right now, the American people, I think. It's just in the world. fear mongering. Fear, 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 fear. And if you're watching this, you're probably at least a little bit interested in energy work, quantum physics, and things like that. And if you perceive something, and if you're focusing your energy on something like manifesting, it's likely that you're going to see more of it. So, in the same way that we can manifest our dreams, we can also manifest our fears. So, what's happening is we're focusing as a collective a lot of our energy on our fears, right? If it's very logic based, if this person becomes president, then all these horrible things will happen. If this person becomes president, then these things will happen. And I'm not invalidating those claims, right? Those are totally valid claims that perhaps, yes, those things will happen. But this election and this choice going into the voting booth, and, yes, it could potentially change the trajectory because of the decision made. However, the consciousness of the people has not changed, right? Like I said, it's like a coin toss of who's going to win tonight. And no matter what happens, the consciousness has not shifted, right? There are still very, very divisive people. And there are going to be many, many, many people who are extremely unhappy with the results. Either way, there is no going around that. So what really is going to change? Well, what's going to change is the truths that we tell ourselves. So instead of this person being president, now this person is going to be president. And now we have to grapple with this. So now it's not grappling with the election decision, it's grappling with the choice that we've made. The choice that we've made. Now the conversation is going to change. It's going to be about, this is the choice that we've made as a collective. We voted on it, and this is the choice that we made. And there's you can think of all these different things that come out of it. It's going to be, how valid is the choice? Voting integrity. It will be a choice about, it'll be a conversation about, is it going to be a conversation? I'm not really sure. Because there's a fear of violence. There's a fear of chaos. And that is so valid. I believe that one outcome over the other will lead to more violence. However, I don't believe that we are organized enough as a collective to come to any collective conclusions. So you look at the events that occurred on January 6th, which everybody talks about, right? Like, oh, January 6th. Oh, that was crazy. It was crazy. It was cool. It was cool that it happened. But ultimately, what was it? It was a bunch of fringe individuals feeling motivated, adrenaline, cortisol, going at it. And I think we could see some more of that type of behavior. But is it going to be, I think they're working for sure on a level of organization that spans beyond that. Perhaps a internet type of organization versus a physical organization. Things like boycotts, things like a way to stick to the man, ways to show that we are dissatisfied, right? So that's what the idea is here. It's, we make a choice, and yes, that choice will be locked in by the end of the week, locked in, or maybe not. I think that's also something, right? Like, how many times are we going to count things? How many times are we going to verify things? And there are a group of people who would not believe it, even if it were true. Okay, so we're combating a belief. We're combating. I'm not combating it, but people are combating beliefs. We cannot combat beliefs. That is not productive. And so ultimately, the reason why I feel relaxed about this decision is there's nothing new. It's just on paper now. You know what I'm saying? Like, the consciousness is just on paper. So now we have a mushroom that rears its head from this complex network, and we get to look at that mushroom. And now we get to reflect. And this is the exciting part, because upon reflection is where change happens. And if we want to extract this and use a more personal example, so say you make a specific choice in your life and you're not proud of it, okay? Or you are proud of it, doesn't matter. You make a specific choice in your life and it rears its head to you, and you realize, oh my gosh, I made this choice and I regret it, or I'm really proud of it. Either one. And then you can reflect and say, why did I make that choice? And why am I proud of it? And why do I regret it? Okay, so you're asking these questions about the choices you've made. So we need to do that as a collective. Okay, this is the outcome, question mark, right? So that's an open question. This is the outcome. Do we accept it? That's going to be question one. This is the outcome. What does it mean is going to be question two. And where do we go from here? But people have been waiting to make choices about where to go from here until this choice is made. And I guess that makes sense. You know, you have to have like some sort of foundation for the next situation. But I think overall, what I'm really excited for is the idea that next election cycle, there will be a greater third party candidate, much greater third party candidate. And if there's not, I will be very disappointed. But I have full faith that over the next 4 years, there will be a very strong third party candidate. And I believe that this election cycle is going to catalyze that because people are going to realize that this is not working. Like whatever, like we need to, as a collective human family, come together and just be like, yo, bro, this isn't working. And it takes a lot of healing work to do that. You know, like within yourself as a system, it is really challenging to look back on your life and see the things that you aren't proud of, see the things that disgust you, really look at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is who we are. We need to do that. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror, not just talking about all the systemic injustices that have happened, but in terms of what is emerging right now. Are there deer? I hear a lot of leaves. In terms of what is emerging right now, what is happening right now, right? What is happening right now? We need to take a real good look at it in the consciousness, not just in the systems, not just in the structures, not just in the organizations, but in the consciousness. What is going on in the consciousness of the minds of these human beings? Because if you feel like you are in a constant state of stress or fear, you are not going to be proud of the decisions that you make. And you're going to have to come to terms with that in the future. So the I don't want to say the quicker you become conscious, but the more focus you spend on being intentional about your choices, the easier it's going to be to look back and realize that the choices you made were necessary for you, right? Like I look back at my life and I'm like, oh man. Like for example, I transferred schools. I transferred from the University of Miami to the University of Connecticut. I was writing it up in my book. And I experienced still in my soul like some regret because I'm like, oh, I don't know what that version of me would have been, right? But I trust in my soul that this is necessary for me to do the things I need to do. But it wasn't necessarily necessary. It wasn't necessarily necessary. It was just a choice that I made. And it's whether I'm going to commit to that choice or not. So say you make a decision that you're not proud of, and say you hurt somebody in the process. It's whether or not you want to align yourself with that choice. Are you that person, or are you the person that wished they made a different choice? It's okay to go back and change your mind. My mom, she voted for a particular candidate back in 2016. It's not that we had a conversation about it. It's not that she regrets it. She understands the motivation in her decision, and she's not too prideful such that she needs to stick to the decision. Let's not be blind to ourselves and our choices. Let's understand why we're making the choices we are and come together and have conversations about the rooted issues, problems, concerns, whatever. So I'm excited for the change that's going to come, the inevitable chaos that will ensue. And I say that with nothing but love in my heart. Like, chaos is inevitable. I think I want us all to understand that. Like, the universe is constantly going from order to chaos, order to chaos, order to chaos in a macroscopic and a microscopic way. So if you feel a sense of chaos and stress, let it happen. Like, ride the wave. And I will lead this into my last point, which is about pendulums. I don't know if you're familiar about pendulums, but pendulums require kinetic and potential energy. Maybe you're familiar. You have a pendulum that goes doot, doot, doot. You know your hypnotist, doot, doot, right? A pendulum is used in hypnotizing, because it is a particular frequency and it patterns your body. I'm going to say that. That's really, really vague, and I'm not a hypnotist. I kind of actually am a certified quantum healing hypnotist, but I don't actually like use it or practice it on other people. So there's this idea in this book called Reality Transurfing, where the collective is, you can think of the collective belief as acting like a pendulum. Okay. So for example, this election, people get swept up in this pendulum of la, 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 la. That's what I see. Right? And if you wanted to, like it did in 2020 for me, you can be a part of the pendulum and you feel this pull emotionally. You're like, gut wrenching. You feel it in your soul. I'm scared of what's going to happen. I'm scared. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that feeling is invalid. It is definitely valid to feel fear. But you need to ask yourself what you are so scared of. You don't need to. You don't need to. But if you want to, I invite you. What are you so scared of? And why are we so focused? I say this is a recurring theme in my videos. Why are we so focused on the future? What about the right now? Right? The thing that people get excited about, I think, about the elections is that like, oh, it's the future. It's change. It's something different could happen for my future, something better for me. But subsequently, you're also worried about things that could be worse for you. And these are just like externalized representations of what's going on within our own systems, our familial systems, our personal systems, everything. So I've consciously chosen to see the pendulum and not participate. And it's been beautiful. I understand and I empathize and I validate the human beings who have really strong feelings about what's going on right now. And I recognize my privileged position to be able to be conscious and removed. And it's also known as the observer effect. And by not letting my emotional body get swept up in the theater and the sporting event nature of what is going on right now, I allow myself to continue to live in my inner peace. And that inner peace is going to continue to be fortified over time, such that when there is an immediate crisis for me or my family or the people I love, I can act from a place of love, compassion, and peace rather than from an intensity place, a triggered place, a stressed out place. Because ultimately, if we're all participating in this theater, if we're all participating in the fear mongering, if we're all participating in the sporting, betting like nature of this event, who is going to have the perspective of clarity? And I'm not saying it's me, right? But I'm saying in general, if all of the wounded healers are still wounded, who has the perspective? It's not necessarily higher, but who has the other level of perspective that can provide insights and move things forward in a new direction? And I just like, I look at everything that's going on and I'm like, wow, brilliant. Absolutely fascinating, absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. The fact that all of these human beings can come together to create this event, it's phenomenal. Like, I love seeing human beings authentically express their emotion. I love it. But the question that I raise is this really authentic? I guess I'll say the metaphor of this. The pendulum is like, you know, if you're going to the beach in the summer and there's a riptide and they don't let anybody go in the water, right? Because they're like, you're going to get swept out to sea. Or they say, be careful. Maybe you don't want to swim. There's a riptide unless you're like a freaking pro swimmer. And then you're like, pew, pew, right? I'm not a pro swimmer, so I'm not going to dive into the riptide. But what I'm seeing in my consciousness is like, caution, riptide, don't go swimming right now, which is the pendulum of this election. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go swimming. Doesn't mean I can't see the riptide. Doesn't mean that I can't appreciate the water. Doesn't mean I can't still sit on the beach. What it does mean, though, is that I'm not going to die in the riptide. And two, if somebody else needs help, I can see that from my vantage point on the beach, right? Somebody else goes swimming because they are a professional swimmer, or somebody else goes swimming and they don't see the warning, or somebody else goes swimming and thinking they can handle it, and turns out they can't. And then they're stuck in the riptide and the ebbs and flows and you can't escape it. You need external help. You need a lifeguard. You need a pro to come in and be like, I got you, brother, right? So that's what I imagine happening with the election is like, I'm sitting on the beach. I'm sitting on the beach watching the riptide. I'm not going swimming because what I've recognized in my consciousness that everything says don't go swimming over there. That isn't going to be helpful for you because ultimately the outcome of the election is going to affect me as much as I energetically immerse myself in it. And I'm not saying that the laws don't touch everybody, and I'm not saying that governance doesn't touch everybody. Of course it does. But is it touching me in this moment? No. No. I don't remember the last time a law consciously affected me. And perhaps that's a privileged position, but I recognize my privileged position, and I'm using my privileged position to continue sharing my values of love, light, and peace. And there will be criticism from people who say, oh, well, you're not getting your hands dirty. You're not like immersing yourself in the experience. And it's like, I know better than to try to get my hands dirty in a riptide knowing I can't swim. It's a risk. And maybe miraculously, I can't swim and I end up surviving the riptide. That's awesome. But I don't want to spend my energy doing that unless I'm training for like a riptide extravaganza, which I'm not doing right now. Because it's not to say this is the last riptide of our time. But like I said, the thing I'm excited about is knowing that after chaos, it's not that it comes order, but it's a different sense of order. It's change. And this election is so deeply personal for so many people. And because of that, it means it's going to trigger a lot of wounds in a lot of different people. And we are going to be like knives out, right? And I've done that. I've already been knives out on my life. I've already been knives out on other people. I've been knives out on myself. And I recognize that that doesn't serve me. It's a necessary rite of passage. And I'm very grateful that I did it before now. So the people who this may be a catalyst to their awakening, this may be a catalyst to their conscious change. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the invitation this will allow for more people to become active and conscious in their consumption of media as well, and how willing we are to participate in this game of theater and this hand-waving illusion, because the theme of this next stage of our lives is about realizing, putting into action and enacting change, because we recognize and realize the structures are crumbling, not necessarily physically, although infrastructure, yes, sometimes they are actually physically crumbling. We are not happy. This is what I opened with the video. People are angry. People are not feeling served by the people in power. And there are so many different industries, government, music, entertainment, sports, all these things, right? Like the Me Too movement we saw in gymnastics, we saw the sexual assault extravaganza. Maybe that's not a great word to call it, but it was a sexual assault extravaganza, the big trial of Nasser from the USA Gymnastics. So we see it in sports. The power dynamic is shifting. We see it with P. Diddy. We see it with entertainment. The power dynamic shifting. We saw it with the strikes, the writer strikes. We see it in government now by recognizing that this isn't working. It's not working. It's not working. So this is a collective invitation to say, okay, do we realize that this isn't working? Yes or no? Do we acknowledge our choices? Yes or no? And how are we going to move forward? And the conversations that these next couple of months are going to spark, the events that this election is going to spark, is going to enhance our understanding of ourselves. And only once we have a strong understanding of who we are right now and what we need and what we want right now, can we move forward and take action in a way that serves us. Because as I said in my previous video, in a personal anecdote, until we feel the emotion, we should not express or take action, because you'll be taking the action from a place that isn't embodied. It's going to be cognitive. It's going to be theoretical. And that's quite frankly what most of our structures were built on, theory. And not to say that those theories didn't end up being true, but a lot of the things that were built, constructed, were based on ideas that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people with power had. And now as a collective, we have more say in what comes next. And I think it's just an exciting time. Nerve-wracking for some, exciting for me. Nervousness and exciting energy sometimes looks the same and feel the same. So if you are personally affected by the results of the election and you feel turmoil and you feel pain and suffering and scarcity and fear, I want you to know that I love you and I'm with you in that. Like I don't, just because I'm not feeling it doesn't mean my heart doesn't go out to you and I don't resonate with what you're experiencing. Like I said, I have experienced it just 4 years ago, and I've made a conscious choice and a conscious effort to heal and do the things I needed to do to be able to be the observer on the beach rather than in the riptide. And there is no shame involved in being a part of the riptide. There is no shame involved in being that ambitious swimmer. There is no shame involved in feeling fear or suffering surrounding this election and these choices. And all that comes from is just like inner turmoil, inner, like I felt so much shame and so much guilt in my life. And you need to feel those things to understand them. But ultimately, like, I'm not placing that on anyone else. I'm not placing blame or judgment or shame on anybody else for the choices that they make, because everybody is on their own journey, as I say. And this was just mine. And this is where I've landed. And I'm very, very grateful, very blessed, and very happy to be here. And I invite you into this consciousness if that's something you choose to do, because it's just helped me so much to stay grounded and calm in even the most chaotic moments. And I do believe that it's going to get more chaotic. So I invite you to have, I don't want to say a positive outlook, but a curious, open-minded perspective of what's to come rather than getting swept up in that pendulum. I don't necessarily know if that will serve you. And it will suck all of your energy until you have nothing left to give it. And then it will throw you away. So gone are the days of pendulums. All right, my lunch break is over. I am so grateful that you're here. It's such a fucking beautiful day. It truly is a beautiful day. And the sun's just been in my face this whole time. I am so optimistic for the future. And I choose to be optimistic of the future. I choose that. I consciously choose that. Some may call it naive. Some may call it childlike. But I deserve that. I deserve to honor my childlike self and the love that I have for the universe, the love that I have for you, the love that I have for everybody, regardless of the choices that you make. I trust and know that everyone here is meant to be here. Everybody watching this is meant to watch this. And who we are is who we are. And we should embrace that to the best of our abilities every single day. That's my speech. That's my stump speech. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on all my socials at Lana J. Dell, LANAJDEL. I say that because I said that to somebody out loud and they didn't know how to spell it, and I want to have compassion for that. LANAJDEL on all socials. And then my email is Lana Jade Reads. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I love comments, especially about hot topics like this, because everybody's perspective is so valuable and so beautiful. There is, what, 8 billion of us here. And so the fact that 8 billion of us are here means we have 8 billion unique perspectives. That's insane. And so I'm excited to hear yours. Leave it down below. Chat with me if you'd like. Reach out to me. And I look forward to seeing what unfolds. Oh, I guess I'll say my final prediction. My final prediction is that Kamala Harris is going to formally win. And I put this in quotes because, like I said, some people don't believe in the formal winning process. I personally do believe in the formal winning process. So I believe on paper, Kamala Harris is going to win. And I believe the events that will unfold over the next 3 months will be the consequences of that. That's my prediction. Love you guys.